It's very busy on this end. My goodness, my day was in nonstop, and this has been an exciting week. We used to hold these conferences, live conferences, lifestyle changing conferences over the years, and we've been doing them since 2006 with physicians, and in 2009, and this is the first week long, seeming like a conference that I've held in the digital space. And it reminds me of those live conferences. Every day you're rushing, you're on stage and what have you. And even though we're in the digital space, there's some feelings of what we had before in terms of the excitement and like. And so, it almost is exhausting because, getting these ready and getting the speakers ready. So here we are for the final event of the week. And we have our stalwarts here, and some people are still checking in, and, welcome to everybody as they come in. So this is good. So I'm going to turn over the realms to Jackie, who's going to be the host. She's going to interview, moderate. So I'm just going to sit back and let you take over, Jackie. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Montgomery. So tonight's topic is why the optimal health community, a conversation with cardiologist and cardiac electrophysiologist, Dr. Baxter Montgomery. So I'm glad you all are here. Dr. Montgomery, are we going to take questions from audience members afterwards?
Sure, I'm open to that. We can, in fact, they can put questions in the chat during my conversation, and so and those are always good because we like to chat questions also because we can save those, and we'll save the chat questions in addition to answering them live. And some may require more in-depth answers, so we may save them and respond later. But yeah, certainly at the end, I'm good to take questions via chat or live, one way or the other.
Okay. So in a few minutes, we're going to get into why you created this community and your vision for it. But first, I wanted to ask you, I'm going to assume that growing up, you didn't eat plant-based and you didn't learn about it in med school. So what was your journey to eating plant-based and recommending it to your patients?
Yeah, you're right. Growing up, I, grew up on the standard American diet, and that's what we knew about. Elementary school, high school, college, et cetera. I mean, and I enjoyed those days. So I have fond memories of my youth, growing up. Every, phase of my life was a very special time. I mean, I don't recall having, a time in my life where there was some drastic trauma, certainly not growing up. And food was really intertwined in, that time. And so, I can really, testify to the fact that I really enjoyed growing up with family, friends, loved ones, and I can arguably say that one of those loved ones was the food intertwined with my life, and it's an important thing I like to point out because it's something that is in all of our lives, and so the standard American diet, food that I loved at the time was as much part of me as, every other part, the people around me, the environment. So, going through medical school, you're right, I didn't learn about plant-based diet, of course, I didn't learn about nutrition. One odd thing, though, is that I recall, and I think it might have been when I was in medical school or college, I saw a Phil Donahue show with Dave Robbins on it. John Robbins.
John Robbins, yes, yes.
And he was talking
Diet for New America.
Diet for New America. And so right. I don't remember what year. Was that in the 90s or 80s? Do you remember?
I think it was in the 80s. He's the heir to the Baskin. His father was the, Baskin, the Robbins of Baskin and Robbins.
Yep. Yeah. And he,
he turned his back on all that.
On that, yeah. And so I bought that book.
You did.
But I didn't read it. And I remember it was, so I probably was in college. I was in college in the 80s and also med school in the 80s. So I was in college from 82 to 86, med school from 86 to 90. So if it was the latter part of 90, so it could have been when I was in medical school. But I point that out for a reason because when I had the book and I didn't read it, I think the not reading of that book had an impact on my life. Maybe had I read that book then and had become aware of the power of plant-based nutrition, my course in medical school training might have been different. I might have done just primary care, not done the subspecialty, et cetera. But the fact that I didn't read that book, I think, allowed me to go through that natural progression of my medical training, the indoctrination, the full indoctrination, if you will. And not only, let's say, full indoctrination, went to medical school, then I did research, and then I decided I wanted to be a cardiologist while I was after my first year of medical school. So then when I applied for internships and residency, I applied for places that had strong cardiology, divisions. And so I got my first choice. And so I went there. And then by the time I was a second year resident, I decided I wanted to go into cardiac electrophysiology, which was another subspecialty. And so I did that. And so I went into my fellowship and I did my fellowship. And during my fellowship, I always had a desire to do something with wellness. I didn't know exactly what that meant, but there was an interest in wellness. And so when I decided to do that, it kind of put sort of a notion in the back of my brain. So that was one thing. The other important thing that happened to me that I think helped me in this situation was that I incorporated, and I met my CPA when I was maybe a second year resident or third year resident. And he said, well, you need to incorporate. I said, what's that? And he explained, I read some books. And so I became incorporated. So when I did my moonlighting, I had my money paid to the corporation. I learned some, tax laws. And that was important because what happened then was that it set me on the course to go into my own practice. At that point, I said, I'm not going to work for anyone. I want to have my own business and work on tax. And now, the whole underlying building blocks of that, I think, started even earlier when I was a child. And my parents, we built a house cash. And I was like, I don't know how old I was, maybe 6, 7 years old. And I remember we were in our apartment. My dad said, let's go and drive to see the lot to the new house. And I just heard him say new house. We got to the lot. We saw just a lot with weeds. And I said, well, where's the new house? And he said, well, we're going to build it. And I saw a lot with weeds evolve into a new house. And so that impact on me as a very young kid, the concept of building something from scratch. Fast forward to now, or to then when I'm in training, it's like, okay, I want to build my own practice. So that whole notion of, I want to build my own was, instilled in me a very long time ago. So having said that, and that was an important factor, as I'll explain later. So I went through my training and started my own practice, got out, was doing the usual cardiology practice, had an income guarantee, which helped out tremendously, was seeing patients in the emergency room and just sort of learning to build a practice. And doing procedures, I did cardiac electrophysiology procedures, ablations, and pulmonary vein ablation, and Wilcox-Watt ablations, and device implants, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, heart caths. And so it was a busy, booming practice, seeing sick patients one after the other. But of course, over the first, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, as things grew, I did well. I started to know, well, the patients continued to come back. They were sicker. And I noticed that, hey, my health wasn't so great. My cholesterol was up and it's gaining weight and so on. So, I started making some, inquiries. And I started reading things in the lay press, books and the like, for natural causes. I knew I didn't want to take medications. I'd seen medication prescriptions. I prescribed them. I didn't like taking medications. I didn't take medication at the time. And I saw a physician that did bariatric medicine. I did a special diet, lost a lot of weight, but, my cholesterol still didn't go down. So I started looking into things. One of my patients was seeing an herbalist. I saw an herbalist. I started, reading into that. So I just started taking stepwise approaches into this whole field of healing outside of the allopathic medical realm. So that was really the big push. And I started seeing things go on in that realm and was intrigued with it. The critical event, as I recall, was that I took a raw vegan chef course, and it was on a weekend, it was a crash course. And I became a certified raw vegan chef. And during that course, I learned about plant-based nutrition. As a raw vegan chef, she taught us a lot of recipes, and we did some things. And I met a local guru named John Rose. He was a juice feasting detox, specialist, and he coached a lot of people through juice feasts. And I did a 33-day juice feast, and that was my introduction to vegan life, raw food. And I'm glad it happened that way, because that's kind of like the extreme, right? I mean, I think the only thing higher could have been a water fast.
Yeah.
So I did 33-day juice feast, and I came out of that feeling amazing. I felt probably like I was 18 years old. So I was over 20 years younger, and I was floating, I was walking. And it wasn't just the weight loss. I mean, my cholesterol went down, all that stuff, but there was a charge in my body. There was a charge in my mind. There was different, I was irradiating. So it was more than just, people lose weight and all sorts of things. It was more than just that. It was just something that, like, somebody just plugged me up to, a wall socket, and I was just floating.
Right.
So I said, look, a vegan diet is easy. So I continued that. And so that was the lead to my personal journey into eating that way. Now, prior to that, I had issues where I was taking care of my mother, who was ill, and I did not, learn about plant-based diet in time for her. But what I did learn, the lesson she taught me on her deathbed, was how destructive these standard American diet is, how the standard American diet could be, and how these medications, because she died of liver failure. And at the time, I was, learning from the herbal medicine person. I actually applied some herbal medicine things with her with some partial success, but the nutritional detox part I didn't know about. So I was moving in that direction, and her death was a push of momentum for me to learn more about this. And so it was within a year's time of her dying, I took the raw vegan course, and I learned a detox. And then I started applying this to patients. And, her death was just very fresh with me. And when I saw patients turning around in a matter of days, I'm not talking about patients with minor problems. I'm talking about patients with end-stage heart failure, turn around in days. That was the big push for me to say, okay, I need to learn more about this, and I need to figure out how to implement this in my practice.
And that's what you did. And so let me ask you, why do you think that med schools teach doctors so little about nutrition?
Well, I think it's intentional. The purpose, it's almost like, why does a robber rob a bank and not put money in the bank? Because his job is to rob the bank. The job of the medical institution, as I see it now, is not to teach doctors to heal patients. The job of the medical institution is to train doctors to promote and perpetuate the medical business industry. That's their job. And so if a robber comes in your house to steal your TV, you're not going to say, oh, Mr. Robert, why aren't you, repairing the baseboard or sweeping the floor? He said, no, my job is to steal your TV. You call the maid for that. So it's, I'm not being, well, maybe I am being a little cynical and sarcastic, but it's I've come to that conclusion. And I think we should all come to that conclusion, because if you know the robber who comes in to steal your TV, and you have that expectation of the robber, you're not disappointed. You feel bad, but you're not disappointed, because that's what they're going to do. The dog goes out and they poop on the grass. It's a dog, whatever the dog does. So if we have the expectation of the medical industry to do what they do and perpetuate promotion of pills and procedures, that's what their intention is. That's what their role in the world is. If we don't expect more from them, then we won't be disappointed.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. So as you began to integrate plant-based nutrition into your practice, how did it change your patients' health? What were you seeing in your practice that made you stick with it?
we saw some amazing things. Now, one thing I like to emphasize when I answer that question and questions similar to it is that when I saw amazing findings with implementing just simply raw fruits and vegetables, these amazing findings are juxtaposed to me working in the largest medical center in the world for, at that time, more than a decade. Now it's 2.5 decades. So this medical center has its own zip code. This medical center has 3 heart transplant centers in walking distance. So you have all of the advanced technology triplicated in this, and that's only in the one location I work. If you expand out in Houston, Houston has maybe 15 medical centers. And we have the world's largest medical center in the so-called medical center, but we have many other medical centers that are larger than most medical centers in the world or in the nation. These are all subsidiary medicals. And then Galveston, where I did my medical school training, is a medical center in and of itself. And it has its own heart transplant center. And then Dallas has a heart. So I'm in an area where we have lots of advanced medical technology. So when I say I saw amazing changes that I've not seen before, I'm saying I saw amazing changes that had not been seen at the state of the most advanced medical training or medical treatment that we have to offer. So for example, I recall one lady with congestive heart failure. She had already had quadruple bypass, and then she had had stents after the bypass. And then she was on 21 medications. Her heart was beating about 10%. She was in a wheelchair, had arthritis, on oxygen, and had pain. Her husband wheeled her in. She was in bad shape. But what happened was, when I saw her, I said, I'm just seeing you for the first time. You're on 21 medications. Am I going to add the 22nd or 23rd medication? Or are we going to do something different? And so, fortunately, I had already been predisposed to the detox and already tried it on some patients. And so I asked them, do you have a juicer? And they said, yes. I said, great. Here's what I want you to do. So I wrote out some juicing recipes. And I said, for the next 10 days, I want you to juice all the food, don't eat. And we made a few changes in the medications. Came back in 10 days, no wheelchair, no oxygen, walking, talking, laughing, feeling much better. 10 days, 10 days. And we continued, she did better. We applied this in patient after patient after patient. Now I was careful to follow up with them quickly. First, 7 days, 10 days, no more, no longer than that. Because I say, okay, I want you to do this for 7 days. I'll do this for 10 days. Usually it was just 7 days. Come back and see me. Because I knew they can do it. It was pretty stringent. So I knew they can do it for 7 days. Mm-hmm. You come back, so I feel great. When can I eat? No, give me another 7 days. And so we worked out the process where we did a 4-day program, and then we kind of manipulated it. But I saw 100% effectiveness. When I had 100% compliance, I saw 100% effectiveness. And when we did the 7 days, we had very high compliance rate because I would write out the recipes and people were able to do it for just 7 days. They come back, and everybody that followed the regimen had success. I've never seen anything like that in my medical practice. Probably the only 100% therapy, as an electrophysiologist, we have these catheter ablation procedures where we ablate the certain rhythms, SVT, and I probably had 100% success rate with ablating SVT. And these are just circuits that you ablate and it's gone for good. Even with Parkinson White, sometimes it comes back, you have dormant pathways, but certain types of SVT you ablate, you get 100. Those are the only time you had pretty close, maybe, it's probably, we always say 95% because there's probably a rare case of somebody having something. But the point is, almost never you have 100% effectiveness in therapy you do in allopathic medicine. This, we saw 100% improvement in everybody coming back. And it was just amazing.
Right. And so that's the basis of what you recommend for your patients now, right?
Yeah. And it goes back to that foundation, because when I'm counseling patients, I go to that very we have a lot of programs. We're going to talk about some of the things we're doing. and the meal plans and boot camps, and we're talking about an online community, and there's a whole spectrum of things that we do and we recommend. But the foundational concept of what we do starts with that nutritional cleanse. And there's a fundamental aspect to that nutritional cleanse that goes far beyond nutrition. And as I've kind of reflected on it over the years, because when you do a nutritional cleanse, whether it's raw fruits and vegetables only, juice feasting, water fasting, there's a concept of process, I should say, of giving up. And I was sharing that with a patient today. He was, loathing giving up meat. And I said, well, and this was she, I think it was a female patient. There were two patients I had this conversation with. And so I told her, I said, look, he said, well, I'm Creole. I eat this kind of food. I said, well, wait a minute. If I were a car salesman and I gave you the option of two cars, and I said, well, you could pay me $5,000 for this car. It has a few thousand miles on it, but it works well. It'll drive you anywhere you need to go, et cetera. Or you could pay me $200 for this other car that'll barely start. It'll probably get you out of the parking lot, but I can't guarantee much after that. Which car would you purchase? And she said the $5,000 car. And I said, okay, well, that's what I'm offering you with the meal plan. But you have to realize that to get more, you have to give up more. And so the whole concept of getting on a nutritional cleanse, few people have a problem with eating salads, drinking smoothies, eating broccoli or whatever. Mm-hmm. The least healthy person can eat something healthy every now and then. What people have a problem with is completely giving up.
Yeah, not a bite, not a drop, not a crumb. Right. Not a bite, not a drop, not a crumb. Right.
That's the hard part. And so we get right to the hard part. Not a bite, not a drop. I eat great. Okay, what are you eating? And then we start listing things off. There's a bite, drop, a crumb. And so that concept of completely giving up, there are the spiritual aspects to it, practical aspects to it, as I alluded with the car. But that's a process of growth, a process of development. So it's not only the food aspect of it, but it's the mental and spiritual component of, can I do this? Do I want to do this? Am I willing to give this up for something even greater? Right. And we get into the exercise of that value proposition. And so the reason I emphasize that raw fruits and vegetables only concept is that it's not only the nutritional part, it's the whole mental, psychological part of what am I willing to do to give up something that's really not benefiting me that I think I want for something that's far greater.
Right. What am I willing to do to take care of myself?
That's right.
And to improve my health. So if you are eating to improve your health, you're eating a whole food plant-based diet, primarily raw. How is that different from simply being vegan? Because I talk to lots of patients who are really in the mindset that if I'm eating vegan, then that's all I need to do.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, largely because we if you read my book, I don't talk. In fact, in my book, I intentionally say this is not a vegan diet. I say, something along those lines. I make the point that first, that there are two levels of that, maybe more than two, but at least two. One aspect, vegan is a label. Now, I like vegan because there's some level of convenience. So the vegan label is useful. So I don't want to, this is being recorded. I want people to understand that there's usefulness of that label, because when we look at something that's packed and says vegan, we know what it does not have. So that's certainly a useful label that gets us beyond a lot of things. So, you're looking at something that's, okay, vegan. Okay, great. It doesn't have, X, Y, Z. We know that. But it's not adequate in and of itself to determine a food prescription. So if I'm prescribing, for instance, I'm prescribing a medication. Let's say, You got high blood pressure and a fast heart rate, I'm going to prescribe metoprolol XL, so I'm going to long-acting metoprolol, 50 milligrams by mouth twice a day. Okay, or 50 milligrams by mouth once a day. Now, I've given you some very specific parameters. I give you the name of the drug, the dosage, how to put it in your mouth, and how frequently to take it. There's a level of specificity to that. I don't just say, oh, you got high blood pressure, take a medication. Okay, what medication? How much? What dose? There needs to be a level of, so a prescription requires a level of specification. And sometimes you're more specific. Some medicines you take on an empty stomach versus on a full stomach, or 4 hours before. And this, so there are levels of specification to prescriptions that we are accustomed to. So when you get to a food prescription, one must have a similar level of specification. So not only, so we know that plant foods are better than non-plant foods. I'll put it that way. At least the data shows that, and in my book, I described that, I think, in chapter 4. Mm-hmm. So then the next thing is, okay, now what should we do with the plants? What about the plants? So then the plants should be as close to their origin, as natural and close to their origin as possible, as close to their natural state as possible. So the mentally processed as close to their natural state as possible, and they should be whole as much as possible, not extracted, not heated, etc. Because you want the plants in a natural state, as close to their natural state as possible, so that you get the optimal nutritional value from those plants. So that's the other aspect of plant food. So we have a food classification system that looks at that aspect of it. Now, natural state, what does that mean? Well, how is it cultivated, or was it cultivated? Now, something that's grown in the wild has an advantage over something that's cultivated. Something that's cultivated organically has advantage over something that's cultivated in a conventional manner using pesticides and the like. So we start off with to say, okay, Mr. Food, are you plant-based? Mr. Food says, yes, I'm plant-based. Okay, great. Tell me about your childhood. How were you raised? Well, I grew up in the wilderness. Oh, wonderful. That's even better. Well, we'll have you over, Mr. Food. Or Mr. Food may say, I was cultivated in an organic family, or, I was cultivated right around the corner. And my farmer did not spray pesticides. He didn't get the ground tested and get the organic certification, but, he didn't spray pesticides or fertilizer. We have to kind of fend for ourselves. Oh, great, Mr. Food, come on over. So you want to get those aspects of the nature. So now you have the food and it's sitting on the plate. So Mr. Food, you had a great, background, a childhood. Now what's happened to you since you've been harvested from the wild or harvested from the field? Mr. Food says, well, I was baked, I was grilled and sauteed. Oh, Mr. Food, that's too bad. We can't have you for dinner, Mr. Food. We're going to have to put you aside. But if Mr. Food says, well, I was chopped, wasn't heated above 105, 120 degrees, they add a little bit of herbs and seasoning. Okay, Mr. Food, we can have you over. So you want to understand where the food comes from and the background of the food, because you don't want to create a relationship of food that has a bad background. Just like if you are dating somebody, you want to date somebody. So, well, my dad beat me, my mom beat me, and I was, in the penitentiary, and they all beat me there, and I beat all my other relatives, and I'm here to go out and date you and beat you too. He said, no, well, we can't.
No, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. And so that's what you want to think in terms of the concept of your food. And, it creates a relationship with the food, because, see, once you start to eat Mr. Plant or Mr. Baked Chicken, you start to create a relationship with it, right? Mr. Kale, Mr. Spinach. And you say, well, Mr. Kale, I like you, Mr. Sauteed Kale in oil. Well, Mr. Sauteed Kale in oil, may not be a good partner for you. And so Mr. Sauteed Kale in oil, it tastes great, but he's going to raise your cholesterol up. You fall in love with Mr. Sauteed Kale in oil, but then you have high cholesterol. So it becomes a one-way relationship, because Mr. Kale sauteed in oil is not going to be the best thing for you. So vegan in and of itself is a label, it's convenient, but you need to go further than that to understand where the food comes from, how it was prepared, et cetera.
Okay. Um, I found this quote. It came up on Facebook today. W.B. Du Bois said, "We should measure the prosperity of a nation not by the number of millionaires, but by the absence of poverty and the prevalence of health." How is America doing?
Oh my goodness. We're in bad shape because, that's an interesting quote because, you know, the prevalence of billionaires. I mean, you think of a billionaire, what makes somebody a billionaire? Well, a certain amount of wealth that you have, and there's power that goes with that wealth. Obviously, there's money, there's land, there's other things of value. So you think, wealthy people have things of value. But if you were to evaluate the value of an individual, let's start at the individual level, and then we're going to broaden out to the community level. So let's say you have individual A and B. And individual A has, he's a billionaire, and he has, a large house, 5 large houses, yacht, et cetera, et cetera. And, he has all the money that he needs, et cetera. But he has a lot of health problems.
I think of Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs, who passed away.
Yeah.
But there are other billionaires, and a lot of the famous billionaires are, they don't have overt health problems that we can identify. But there are people who are billionaires or millionaires who have health issues. Now, granted, a lot of them can afford to get health care, but with this hypothetical, this billionaire has health issues. Mm-hmm. And so he's not able to do the things he wants to do physically. This other person has a 9-to-5 job, is not a billionaire, but he has optimal health. He runs, he doesn't even have a 9-to-5 job. He's got, he doesn't have a ton of money, but he lives in an apartment. He makes money independently. He has enough to eat all the food he wants, natural diet. He runs, he enjoys the sunshine, the fresh air, his energy. He's got, family, et cetera. You can measure the wealth of these two individuals. And if we look from the right, on the south side, we say, well, I'd rather have this. But from the personal standpoint, you'd rather be the person with optimal health, you're feeling great, mentally, spiritually, and physically, compared to this person with lots of money, but your back hurts all the time, or you're, angry all the time, or, there's a mental anguish, or, a lack of joy, if you will. And this person has all those things. So to that point, you measure the community based on more of these people you have, as opposed to more of these people you have. Mm-hmm. Because the more people you have that are miserable but have a lot of money, and they don't have to be billionaires, they can be worth $30,000, but and have a very comfortable upper middle class life, but still be miserable compared to someone who doesn't have as much and still have lots of joy, physical independence, and so on and so forth. So you measure this as a higher value, because at the individual level is better, and at the community level is better too.
And I think COVID has really demonstrated that. It's really brought out that we are in such poor shape here in America, even though we spend so much money on healthcare. Yeah,
and again, it's the sick care system, and there was a report. I think I might have mentioned in the debate last night that the life insurance companies reported a 40% increase in deaths in individuals aged 18 to 64. Now they've been seeing an uptick in deaths in that age group. The issue is that when you have a 10% increase from one year to the next, that's huge. They had a 40% increase from one year to the next. So they had a 4 times huge increase in deaths. And I don't think it was just COVID, because these people were not dying of COVID, but you had the lockdowns, the stress, all the emotional things, and plus the side effects of the vaccine were probably contributing to this increase in death. Mm-hmm. And you have a situation where it's a vulnerable population, because you start off with a baseline of people who are very sick. And people are sick because we have a lifestyle that is a sick lifestyle. We live in a contaminated environment. We contaminated food. I'm not sure we can call it food, but it's probably drugs that filled with chemicals and poison and GMO and dyes and the like. And the tragedy behind that is that we have no concept or perception of how bad the food is that we're eating. And in the interview I had with Chef Babette, she had stated that, okay, I was addicted to crack cocaine in the past, but that was 7 months. But she had a sugar addiction for much longer than that. She says, for as long as I remember, and an MSG addiction for longer than that. So she also had food addictions that were very problematic as well. And so it's very problematic in terms of what we're dealing with in a community that's very unhealthy. And I think in the United States, probably the Western world is really going to undermine our overall long-term survival or dominance, world dominance, if you will.
So I guess something else was coming to mind, which was that I was talking with a patient today, and we were talking about that I was hoping that she wouldn't see her health status as static, but that if she was heading in the right direction because she's eating the right way and moving her body, that she could see herself as, heading upward. She was on the right trajectory, right?
That's right.
So I guess that leads me into asking the question, what is optimal health?
Yeah. I mean, the concept of optimal health, and we describe it on our website. And as I reflected on it, optimal health is not a state of being. It's a process, if you will. And as you alluded to, that person's health, being on a trajectory. And optimal health is a process where you're on an upward trajectory in terms of your health, lifestyle, mindset, and attitude. So you're on an upward trajectory. What does that mean? Well, of course, you're nourishing the body properly. That's the foundation. You're nourishing it not only with the proper physical food, but the proper mental food. You're not sitting around watching TV all the time. You're here on an optimal health journey, watching, segments of our grand rounds and speakers coming in. But you're reading books. You're expanding your mind. You're thinking of ideas and talking about ideas. So that you're feeding positive things in your mind. You are also moving the body. You're putting the body through stress, okay? Physical stress from the standpoint of exercise, mental stress from the standpoint of solving problems. You're putting yourself in a situation where you're having to solve problems. And my job every day, we see patients, we're constantly trying to solve problems and putting things, that's a mental gymnastics approach. Hopefully you're praying. I mean, pray, meditate. There's a spiritual connection to the one, to God. And ultimately that's what puts you on the playing field above this, day-to-day process of nonsense. So that trajectory is a multi-phase trajectory, a multi-dimensional trajectory. And that's what we, are trying to help people accomplish in the context of this, optimal health community. There's a community that's moving in a certain direction. You talked about a nation. You related to W.B. Du Bois, comment on measuring a nation and its value, but as opposed to billionaires. We're going to create a sub-nation. A nation is just a community of people, connected by a legal jurisdiction, nationalistic jurisdiction under a constitution. Well, this is a community that's going to be under a mindset and a trajectory of optimal health and nutrition, both individually and collectively, so that not only we influence what we do as a group, as individuals, but also as a group, but not only as a one group, then we hope that people look in on this group and see something very special, and we then influence the world around us. And so this optimal health process, if you will, is one that I think is very, very important. And we should all be on this journey.
And so why did you want to create this for your patients and for the larger world? What was your vision, and
it's,
what are you hoping to accomplish? What are you hoping for all of us to accomplish, I guess?
No, that's a great question, because, we, as I described earlier, for some time have been working with patients at the individual level and helping them achieve their health goals. Those goals could have been things like, getting rid of their chest pain, getting rid of swelling. We see patients all the time, my knees hurting, my blood pressure is high, I want to get off the medication. We work with patients to do that. We start at the nutritional level and other things. And we've seen success. Like I said, 100% of the time people comply with it, 100% of the time they're successful with it. However, one thing I realized that there was kind of oftentimes, some kind of, relapses for various reasons. Frequently, the relapse was the lack of community support. I'll give you an example. And one patient, a patient I saw for the first time came to see me, a gentleman with heart failure. He was brought by his brother, I think an older brother. And his older brother shared a story with me, which I'm going to kind of follow up with, but he recounted how he met me, where he saw a news story about us that happened about 12, 13 years ago. The first YouTube story about me, by the way. Long story short, local Fox News came in and did a story on us about what we were doing with our nutritional program with patients, and they wanted to do a special on diabetes. So we'll bring a couple of people in with diabetes so we can interview them, film them, we'll interview, et cetera, et cetera. So they did that. And so they came in and we went through the interview, and they filmed us. I talked for a long time and so on. And it was aired, twice, and I went into the studio, did an interview, and things went well. And so we had an overwhelming, response in the news. I mean, it had 10,000 hits. It went viral here locally and regionally. And it did so well, they took the clip and they sold it to 12 different affiliates around the country. And they also had follow-up. One affiliate and a person living in Atlanta saw that local affiliate's airing of it. And so they then put it on YouTube. The brother, this patient of mine, saw it on YouTube. That was the first time he saw us. And so he started following the program. One of those patients in there was a lady at the time, was 81 years old, came, did a detox. She did excellent. Got off of diabetes in fact, I'm gonna find that video and put it in remind me to find that video and put it in the post in the community. And so she did extraordinarily well, off of medications and so on and so forth. She was a star. She inspired a lot of people. In fact, we got tons of people coming in. It actually launched our whole program in a way that, nothing ever did. She was kind of the star. But that lady who reversed her diabetes died as a double amputee of complication of diabetes. Now, why was that? She died not because she was not able to do it. She did it very well. There was no community. Her family didn't follow the program. She was a faithful member of a church, and she would go to church events, and, she'd been enticed to eat the church food. I mean, she worked hard to stay, but she was a lonely voice in the wilderness. And she would tell me, yeah, my church friend ladies, we don't want to hear about your no meat doctor. But the problem is that there was always that relapse, like a family, and so that lack of community. Now that, again, way back then, there were other examples of that constantly nagged at me. And we had boot camp classes, other memberships, et cetera. But I knew that I had to figure out how to create a substantial community that is going to have a strong foundation, is going to be able to reach people from afar, it's going to be scalable, and we'll also do things locally. But we needed to come in. And so that was always a desire that I had. And it was just a process over time that we were able to put things together to get to where we are now.
Yeah.
But the power of community is something that we realized was necessary very early on in the process of doing this, because individuals were successful. It was just a hard time bringing their communities. Fast forward to the gentleman who saw me recently, his brother, after seeing that video, changed his diet, did raw detox, and his weight went down, his health went improved, and he started, influence his family members, loved ones, neighbors. So he had an influence on other people. The point I'm making is that there's an inward negative influence that a negative community can have. There's an outward positive influence that an individual of strong will can have on other people. If you put the right kind of community together, you can have that positive inward influence from the group to the individual, and a positive outward influence from the individual to the group.
Yeah.
And it can have that positive cascade. And that is the strength of community. Now, everybody's at different parts of their journey. Everybody's at different levels of consciousness and attitude. But what happens when you come into a community and you're feeding into that, then there's a sense of growth, reaffirmation, a sense of learning and exchanging of ideas. And so I think that empowers everyone. There's a collective strength that we have in moving forward as not only as individuals, as a group. You can see someone who's behind you, you pull them forward. You see someone who's ahead of you, you let them pull you forward, and vice versa. That's, I think, is the power of community. And I think personally, I've been inspired by community because, I've never thought of it this way, but, I'm counseling patients all the time. And I'm putting them through that challenge. And I'm hearing this all the time. And I'm seeing patients come back with success stories and come back with challenges. And I have to put myself through a challenge. I go through a water fast or a detox, 101-day juice feast, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm having to reflect on what I'm telling them, and having to reflect on what they're telling me and how they accomplish it. And I've been inspired by so many patients, people who come in with, a lot of people say, well, it's too expensive to eat this way. And I have people on fixed income who I said, well, what is your budget for the week? My weekly budget is $15. I said, okay, here's what it is. Here's a prescription for raw fruits and vegetables. I want you to take this. I mean, 2 prescriptions. I want you to take this, go to the local produce person. And I want you to negotiate, not for $15. You say, look, my cardiologist has me on this plant-based diet, raw fruits and vegetables, and I can't afford your produce. I only have $5 for the week. Can I get all the produce I need for $5 for the week? If I don't do that, I'm going to die. You're going to be supposed to me to die? Tell them that. And some people did it. It was successful. So they get it for $5, they have an extra $10. Negotiate. So the point is that where you lack resources, you must gain resourcefulness. And God take away resources so that we can gain resources. There were times, I run a business, and anybody run a business, the money's never right. You always have too little. you got too little money or too much money but the time when we were, the tightest was when I was the most creative, I gained a greater sense of, hey, I need to do this, that, and the other. And that's, I think, applies to other parts of our lives as well. When you lack resources, you need resources. And of course, you need resources and things like that. We work with people as much as we can. But the point is that the community, I think, is where we can gain momentum individually. What our goal here is this is not just a simple social media platform where we come and chat and share likes and things. This, I think, as I envision, is an alternative to the sick care system that we're all trapped in. I say we all trapped. I include myself as a doctor treating patients, sick care. I have to go to the hospital. That, I was treating patients for many years. That made me sick, treatment, because I was working long hours and not taking care of myself. And so I'm treating the sick, becoming sick. And so when I started this approach and people were having success and then getting off medication, fewer problems, coming back in, I felt great. My mood was great. At the end of the day, wow, we had 5 great stories. It's like, whoa, this is wonderful. Yeah. 10 great stories. It's wonderful. So it was something that helped me and said, well, gosh, this is a great community. I want to do more of this. I want to see more people reversing this and reversing that and come off medications and see, it's a joy.
Well, and bringing us together, we'll see that, we'll be able to talk to other patients and
Yep.
see their successes and
That's exactly right.
What has strengthened them, and maybe sometimes what has weakened them. But I think in having community,
and here are the nuts and bolts. Yeah, and here are the nuts and bolts of Montgomery Health Optimal Wellness as we start to close out. The nuts and bolts are the following. You come in and the different levels of membership, and the different levels are meant for different budgets. People have different budgets and things like that. So there's an insider where you have access to recipes, you have access to replays, you have access to getting questions answered, so experts. So you have access to interacting with other members of the community and access to information from experts, recipes, and things to help build and sustain your lifestyle and motivate you throughout. You'll hear about people doing well. In the inner circle, the next level up, you have access to live interaction, pretty much like what we're doing now. You can come, there'll be grand rounds. I'll have speakers like we had all this week. Once a month, we'll have an expert coming in talking about something like yoga or something like water and something environment, something medical, something health. You'll have that on a regular basis, and then the replays to that. You'll have ways of interacting, submitting questions. You'll have access to me at least quarterly. I may be available monthly on the Stump the Chump. It's where we come in and have questions and things like that. What are your thoughts? And I may share anecdotes of success stories and how these things can apply to each and every one of us. You at another level, you have access to live group coaching. So people that need more help, that could be live group coaching with detox coaching, monthly check-in coaching. And also we're building support groups. And in these support groups, right now, next week, over the next 2-3 weeks, we'll be recruiting people in a circle for either the diabetes support group, heart disease support group, or the weight loss support group. And in these support groups, it's not going to just be everybody coming in and complaining, but it's going to be everyone coming in, and we will work on putting you on like a detox regimen. So, okay, why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? So we'll help you out with real programs. You 3 people, y'all connect by email or Zoom call and come back and tell us how you did over the next week, 2-3 weeks. Okay. In fact, what I'm doing now is we're planning, myself and several of my employees, we're going to do a raw detox together, time restricted eating. We're going to do with meal plans and stuff like that. And I'm getting some of my employees who are not fully plant-based to have them join in. Why? Because I need that perspective. And so we're going to videotape that whole process so you can see the process of other people going through. So the nuts and bolts of this will give you tools and techniques in terms of how to succeed. As the community grows, and Dr. Lyle alluded to this, and he kind of let the cat out of the bag, but we're going to have quarterly, at least quarterly over time. It may not happen for the next 3 to 6 months, but we're going to be coming together initially in Houston and maybe in other parts of the country, face to face, to the extent people can come. So we'll be meeting up and having conferences and cooking sessions and other things. So it's going to be a process of being involved and being in an environment where your mindset, it starts with a mindset. Your mindset is focused on, yes, I can do this. I want to set a goal. Where that goal is run a marathon, climb a mountain, learn 5 languages, whatever that case is. my optimal health journey is going to take me to someplace far and above where I am now. And as a consequence, as a side effect of that, the medication go away, the pain, aches and pains go away, the diabetes go away, because my mindset is not focused on my sick care. My mindset is focused on my optimal health, which is a journey far and above what I'm doing now. And in the process of me going to take that journey, other people are going to see me, and that's going to put them on a positive trajectory as well. We think that people benefit from staying off of these processed sugars, or at least minimizing. And when we individualize detox regimen, it depends. If you have, bad insulin resistance and you don't tolerate them, we will remove them. Or if you have cancer, we will remove them, or some other, extreme chronic illness. So the more stringent the regimen goes, the more often we pull any processed food, including a processed sugar. What is your opinion on stevia or monk food? Stevia, you can have the stevia leaf, and you eat the stevia whole leaf. I think it works well. The extracted stevia, you may consider it in the same light that you would consider agave or honey. However, I think we look at all this in context. And so, again, as you go through your journey, you keep these things to a minimum in terms of what you're eating. So, for instance, you may have a raw ice cream. And so if you like ice cream or raw vegan ice cream, it may have like 3 ingredients. It may have, a nut, a seed, and maybe 4 ingredients, and vanilla flavoring, and maybe it has maple syrup, or maybe it has agave, or maybe it has dates that are ground up. And so you have the sweetener there. So you can keep this in the context. But what I will say about the processed sugars is I would keep them to a minimum. I grow stevia plants and sometimes use the leaves in smoothies. I would prefer doing it that way, or boil them and use them sweet liquid dishes. Do you have any opinions about that? I prefer the grinding and using the leaves in smoothies. I found it disappointing going into the grocery stores, and the fruits and vegetables have been altered so much they don't have smell nor seeds, even organic. Do we need to start a community garden? Sabrina, text yes or no. Are you in the Houston area? So we got an assignment for you. I understand there are local farmer markets. Does that mean only shopping on weekends when they're available? This is a great question, and I'll answer by simply saying I have noticed that too. And the produce, even the organic stuff, has a certain uniformity to it that's very suspicious. So, and we, in our Healthy Lifestyle series, we have a class, we talk about food procurement, and goes through a lot of the problems related to food procurement. So if you haven't done an HLS class, I invite you to do that. But the answer is yes, I think you should go local. And here's my perspective on that. You should grow as much as you can. Now, everybody may or may not have a acre of land in the back of their house, but maybe have pots you can grow herbs in, or whatever. You can grow, buy yourself some seeds. In fact, we're getting to I'd encourage everybody to, Jackie, can you find that link to that video that Christina, Rawfully Organic Christina, does on preparing for food crisis? Can you share that in the chat? You know what I'm talking about? If you can find that anyway. But that's
what class do we show that in? Is it class 3?
It's 4. Gosh. 4, I forget which, but maybe Google. Either way, if you can't find it, we'll share it. Okay. I'll tell you what, we will post it. We'll post it. We'll post that video.
We'll post it to the community.
But anyway, back to this question. It's a great question. So what my perspective is that you should grow as much as you can, whether you're growing sprouts or whatever, herbs, whatever, grow what you can. Then beyond that, if you have a garden, do that. Maybe have neighbors who are sustainably growing things. Grow the farmers markets and get from local growers. Make sure it's local, sustainably grown, organic. If you're local in Houston, Garden Kitchen, we're transitioning our whole kitchen to a sustainable kitchen and organic. And some of our patients get the produce through us. The whole aspect of a community garden, that's something that could actually be developed in the context of this community. But there are community gardens around, and we can find existing community gardens and then support them. Go there and get a group of people to go there and say, okay, Mr. Community Garden, we're going to come here on a regular basis and we want to get such and you grow such and we'll buy it from you. Or if
We
they
could probably get some good rates that way.
You can get good rates. So the community garden people, there's some local farmers, and that's what we're doing. We're buying from local farmers, and we'll actually have a course, and we talk about food procurement, and we'll bring in some local growers, and we'll talk about this whole process of doing that in the Houston area. But then you can also replicate it in any part of the world to the extent that you have the motivation to do it. But that's an excellent question. The answer to that is yes. Don't rely on supermarkets. Go local, support local growers, including yourself as one of those local growers. When on an intermittent fast, is it okay to take your vitamins during the fasting period? You know, I think the vitamins are okay. Make sure there's not significant calories in them. Otherwise, eat them during the feasting time. What about tofu? I make my own. You know, I'm not all right, Sabrina, you're in Houston, so get her information, Jackie. We're going to put on an assignment in the next few months. What about tofu? I make my own. Tofu, I think, can be okay. I'm not a big tofu fan. There are a lot of people who are proponents of tofu, and they say, well, tofu's fine, and other people say, well, I shouldn't eat tofu. So for me, it's not like I have to have it personally, so I stay away from it. If you really like tofu, I say you must get a minimally processed tofu, fermented form of tofu. That's the best way to go. Last question for me. Have you read the book Breathe by James Nestor regarding nasal breathing versus mouth, the devolution of the human skull due to our soft diets and how it is impacted? No, but I'll save that. Save these chats, Jack, if you can. Yeah. And I'll save that and look for that. MontgomeryHeart.com lifestyles, healthy lifestyle series. Yes. So anyway, I think that wraps up our evening. Great questions. And we encourage you guys. The free week goes up through Tuesday, and then we'll be enrolling people for the programs. And Jack, you can put your email in there too if you have any questions. But I encourage you all to join the community, officially sign up, and we would love to have you. What is it called when you eat between 10 and 3:30? That's time restricted eating. That's time restricted. It's one regimen of time restricted. And we do different ones, 11 to 3, 11 to 4, etc. How do you get enough calories on raw food diet if you limit your fat intake to less than 15%? Well, you know, that's a great question. We don't count calories, so we don't know how you get enough. You get enough because you get enough. I mean, the caloric count, I don't think is the most important thing that we monitor in the diet. I mean, there's nothing wrong with counting calories, but I mean, here's an example. In the study we did in our detox phase, in our GK28, we told people to eat ad libitum, as much as you want. We, in fact, eat more. And their caloric intake went down from somewhere like maybe 2,800 calories a day down to about 1,300 calories a day on the meal plan. And they were ate as much as they could. They were satisfied. Now, I think your body is smart enough to know that you're getting enough. And it's not so much calories, but it's nutrients that you really need. Now, yeah, there are times you may need more calories or whatever, but your body's going to probably hunger for more calories, and then you're going to feed it more calories. So I think you should eat natural food in its natural state. And you know, too much by definition is too much, and too little by definition is too little. But the reason we don't say eat this much or eat that much, notice animals in the wild. If you ever seen those Wild Kingdom shows where the animals, you know, the lion eat, or you see a giraffe eating from a tree and monkeys are eating bananas. Do you notice they're not measuring their food? I don't see them at measuring cups, weighing scales. Animals, they don't have weighing scales or measuring cups. That's because they're eating food that's natural for them. And they eat food that's natural and they're full. You know, the anaconda swallows whatever he swallows is full. He doesn't weigh that, he eats it and he says, okay, he doesn't eat another big animal because I had enough. The point is that if you eat naturally what you're supposed to eat, the body will naturally tell you when to stop. Now that process develops over time. Maybe early on when you start, it's not as easy, but over time, your body naturally tells. And that's what we've seen in the years of our boot camp. People eat. One guy came and said, I just don't understand. I eat, a couple of apples and drink a smoothie and, salad, and I'm fine. I'm not hungry. I'm not eating anymore. I mean, he just couldn't understand why he just couldn't eat more. And so there's a natural process where you turn off the clock. And I think that's the important part. Let your body do it. If you consume what is naturally designed for your body, you shouldn't have to measure. And if I told you that 10 drops of cyanide would kill you, but any amount less than 10 drops wouldn't. If you're putting cyanide in your coffee every morning, you have to count the drops carefully. But if you're putting, maybe water in your coffee, water is not going to kill you. You don't have to count the drops carefully because it's something that's, not going to kill you. So if you're putting poison in your system, that's when you have to measure. That's when you measure the fish, just a little piece, or the chicken, just a little piece, because it's poison. You got to measure the poison so it won't kill you right away. I seem to always be hungry on raw food. Keep eating it. If let us work with you and we can help you on selecting the right kind of raw foods. Hunger is oftentimes a withdrawal sensation, and over time that hunger will go away. I'm drawn in the community. I need to lose weight. If I had a heart attack in November, which would you suggest I join? I suggest you do HLS. Jackie, resend that HLS community. And HLS gives you the coaching and also access to Inner Circle, which is all the local stuff. And then you can get with the coaching, plus you can get in the cardiac support group. And HLS is a year-long coaching program, plus the community, plus the support group. So I would do HLS, Adrian. That would be the best program for you. All right. Thank you all. This has been a great week. I've enjoyed your questions. I've been inspired. We will post this on the site of replay. So if you missed any part of this, feel free to go and look at it or share it with a friend or neighbor. Go out and spread the word. Bring more people to the community. We want you, we need you, and we are starting, or I should say continuing, a movement. Help us save the world. Thank you very much. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for being here.